der zentralen Position, muss Schwarzer unter der Vorsicht, dann ist es Fjørtoft, der ist im Strafraum, Tor! Tor! Für die Frankfurter Eintracht, 5:1!
Hi and welcome to the German Fußball podcast, as always joined by my dad in another country, another place. But what we have shared tonight, that is that we have followed the same game.
We have. I've been working at the studio in Norway, so it's rare that I am home and not at the game. So I was doing in the studio. I was doing the whole League Cup round, but of course had also a look at German football, and all the penalty shootouts in English football. And so, how was the experience being at Etihad?
Always good. I mean, the League Cup in of itself is it's interesting to see how clubs approach it. But City have a very strong history of winning the League Cup and had yet another strong team. But like you said, we were following the Bundesliga round as well in what they call the English week, the Englische Woche. And we've had a lot of games going now into the World Cup. I believe now at the weekend will be the last before the squads convene, preparing for the World Cup, in which we will do some German specials, some World Cup specials, but that is for a later time. If we go into the Bundesliga now, there's been Champions League games, group stages have been concluded. There have been 2 Bundesliga games, and then the Champions League knockout stages have been drawn. A lot to dissect from a Bundesliga perspective. That should we start from maybe the top and just go again? Bayern now get drawn against PSG, and are playing them, and also now, as we were almost waiting for that, the inevitability of Bayern pulling away in the Bundesliga.
And I have to put up my glasses, Marcus, because I had to make some notes before we did this podcast. But as you're saying, there have been 2 Bundesliga rounds since we spoke last time, and of course the Champions League. It's interesting with that draw is that Bayern is always using PSG as an example of how you're not going to run a football club, because especially Uli Hoeneß, has always said we can't compete with people or states. We can't compete with people that have oil and gas all over the place. And of course, they have Neymar, they have Messi, they have Mbappe. Bayern is a member-managed club. You have that 50+1 rule. So Bayern just feel they are the last survivor of the big clubs not being owned by others, which is fair. They started this week by beating Hertha Berlin 3-2 away from home. And then you had Werder Bremen, who has done well this season. They haven't kind of let anybody down. They have steadily taken their points, long way away from the relegation zone, but then they're ending up 6-1. What it was interesting with that 6-1 win yesterday being Tuesday, is that Gnabry, who has not been scoring goals for fun. I think everybody will score goals for fun, but he has suddenly got a hat-trick. Just shows you the kind of ability they have up front with Choupo-Moting, Müller, who has been out for a while, Musiala, who's scoring. He's his best season ever, scoring goals, which is very good news for Germany and very good news for everybody who loves football, because Musiala he has the potential to be one of the stars at the World Cup.
In avoidance of sounding too repetitive and saying, oh, Bayern keep dominating and look how good they are, I want to get your opinion on how quickly football changes and whether we see now a resurrection, so to speak, of the Bayern we saw early in the season. The one that said they didn't need the Lewandowski, the one that they said that they played dynamic football. At the same time, and whether he is one reason for it, you have a Choupo-Moting who's now in as a number 9 as well. How do you analyze that situation? Because it was only a few weeks back we were discussing how the German media were leaking things of Nagelsmann's clothing style, and here we are again. How should we read this situation?
Well, first of all, I think we have always said in the podcast, thank God this season, when we come up to the World Cup, there will still be a chance for the other team to catch Bayern. They won't get a championship coming to the World Cup. Well, here we are in a situation when you and me do this. It's night till Thursday. just finished with the Englische Woche, the double game or the midweek game, and they are 4 points ahead suddenly, and they were 3-4 points back. What we had discussed, Marcus, is when you have Union Berlin and Freiburg, they are not the most consistent team because they, in terms of budget, terms of players and everything, they're not there. You saw Union Berlin this week and they were 1-0 up, 2-1 up against Augsburg, but at the end it was 2-2, and these are the games they need to win. And Leipzig beating Freiburg, maybe we'll talk a bit more about Leipzig later, because Leipzig is coming closer and closer. I think what the fact is at Bayern Munich is that Bayern Munich wanted Erling Haaland. That is not a secret. They wanted to keep Robert Lewandowski. When that ending up not having any of those 9, they did the best out of the situation. They said, well, we will maybe be more flexible. We have so many different. We have Koeman, we have Gnabry, we have Sané, we have Müller, we have Musiala, we have everybody without talking about Choupo-Moting. So I think what Choupo-Moting proved when he came on, and I think that is good news for the Strikers Union that I am a part of, although I retired 20 years ago, is that number 9 is needed. You see that by Manchester City, how quick he has established himself, Erling, at Manchester City. You see that Robert Lewandowski at Barcelona, and so on and so on. You see also the teams that we now say are the favorites to the World Cup. My favorite is France. I can just say that before we do our World Cup special. They have Benzema. I saw live Giroud last Wednesday scoring two assists against Salzburg. Mm-hmm. So I think that number 9 position at Bayern will be filled. They are desperate now to keep Choupo-Moting. That is a paradox. He must have the best agent in the world, by the way. He's by PSG, with Bayern, he's everywhere. And he's done a fantastic job for them. Now Gnabry scored 3 goals. So they're scoring goals for fun. But I think it's fair to say, before we do the big analysis of the number 9, I think that when you play up front for Bayern, you will score a lot of goals. I think that is all, like you saw today, Alvarez for Manchester City scored his 7th goal of the season, all competitions today. So he will score goals. Manchester City, if there wasn't Erling Haaland, Alvarez would be a great buy for Manchester City. That is how football is. So when you have a team that scored a lot of goals, a striker, of course, will have his fair share of that. So I think that Bayern found a good balance now. The draw against PSG is tough, but I think they will still manage over 2 games to beat and knock out PSG.
Looking down to the other teams, then, we have our favorite just lurking in the background, as we have touched upon before, a slow start, but now 7 wins in their last 8 games. 1 loss was against Dortmund, where they most certainly should have had a result. Our beloved Eintracht Frankfurt, Dad. And what a week it has been for them. And after that comeback win against, against Sporting Lisbon.
Yeah.
And now getting drawn against Napoli, which I think will be a very, very exciting draw, which I'm curious to hear your thoughts on in terms of the suitability for Eintracht there. And now with a strong form in the Bundesliga as well, with 2 wins this last week as well, they are now suddenly 1 point behind second place.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic week for them, and I will predict that Oliver Glasner, the coach, and Krösche, the head of sport, they will be very attractive for a lot of clubs around Europe. Sporting Lisbon was an unbelievable game. It just shows you that when you have the experience they've had. 2019, they lost in a semi-final against Chelsea. They were a better team. They should have won that game. They lost on penalty at Stamford Bridge. I was there. Sporting Lisbon, they were 1-0 down, turned that game around, and it was big celebration. Then the draw came up, and everybody could say, if you don't follow international football, you can say, oh, well, they avoid the best teams. They avoid the PSG. They avoid the big English teams. But I must say, when I've seen all teams this season, I would put Napoli amongst the 3 best teams in the world. Because if you're best in Europe, you're the best in the world. So I would put them up there. I spoke after the Tottenham game, Marcus. I was on my way to you guys' house to say hello, but I ended up sharing an Uber just to get away from Tottenham because there was no transport there. I was sitting with an Italian journalist, and we were talking about Spalletti, the good old Spalletti, and he said his analysis was, he's a good coach, but his problem, he will lose it at some point. He will be mad. He will lose it, and so he doesn't think that Napoli will be consistent enough to win the Serie A. I don't think they won it since 1990 when a guy called Diego Maradona was their leader. But that it's an unbelievable draw, and it's going to be a very passionate game, as it was today. As we are speaking now, they beat Hoffenheim. They were 3-0 up, 3-1, 3-2, and everybody, wow, what's going on here? And then Jesper Lindström, one of our favorites, Marcus, that we follow very closely. The Dane did well. He was also in the Danish national squad going to the World Cup. Jesper Lindström. So Frankfurt is doing fantastic at the moment. They're up there. There are more or less 6 teams now up there: Freiburg, Union, Leipzig, Frankfurt, Dortmund 6th, and Bayern number 1. So I guess the only consistency in German football at the moment is that Dortmund is inconsistent.
Right.
I don't know if that is a bridge to Dortmund and Wolfsburg maybe.
Yeah, just a quick little note on Frankfurt as well is that you mention the likes of Glasner or Kircher as attractive suitors for any club, but you look now and making the Champions League as well. Mwani with 1 goal, 2 assists today, a Lindström with another goal. Kamada has been brilliant, scored in the Champions League. You see now a market value that will significantly increase now that they make the big stages, and it'll be interesting to see that, like you said, the steps Eintracht will be taking, because who's to say now maybe you establish yourself, maybe you get top 4 in the Bundesliga, then you're making a knockout stage. It's a very exciting time for your former club, Dad. But we will go. But I just
want to say it was a good point, Marcus, because it's also a bit worrying, because last time 2019, after they had that fantastic run in the Europa League, they had 3 goal scorers: Jovic, Rebic, and Sebastian Haller. And we hoped that they only had to sell 1, and they ended up selling all 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And then they Adi Hütter, and Freddy Bobic, we lost them as well. But an unbelievable price to the management, the head of the leaders of the club, managing then to get Krösche and Glasner, and then we'll just hope that I don't have to sell them. But still, a club like Eintracht Frankfurt got to be realistic, because you have to run a club properly. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know, is that Eintracht Frankfurt is a part of the city of Frankfurt, makes sense, which is the finance metropole of the world now, for Europe at the moment, after London and England or UK decided to leave Brexit. So Frankfurt played a very important role in Frankfurt with their passion, with their ability to have identity for all people who live in Frankfurt. On the other hand, a lot of their partners are bankers, bank people, and then you have to run your business properly. That's what I do demand. But I think for every time, I guess there was 10-12 million euro you could get to get to the knockout stage, and somehow you use that money to build. They have built a new camp where all the offices, the first teams are. They have a fantastic project going with the women team. They're in top. They were nearly Champions League with them, or very close, or in the Champions League. So yeah, it's a very good driven club.
Yeah, laying some incredible foundations. It will be very, very exciting to follow. And we will go into a likes of a Dortmund and Wolfsburg, 2 also historic clubs, and with strong foundations, you'd like to think. But it's one of those with Dortmund is, you said that the only consistency is the inconsistency of Dortmund. But at what point do we expect it to settle at Dortmund? What should we expect from a club like that? Now lost to Wolfsburg earlier in this week. So what is there to say about them? Because for all their glitz and glamour in terms of their offensive flair as well, they're not the same exciting Dortmund going forward either.
Yeah, having said that, Marcus, let's not forget they beat Bochum. Yes, Bochum is a weak team, but they beat them at home.
It looks strong. Mukoko looks strong, yes. Fair enough.
17 years of age, been linked to different clubs. There was a time when we thought that he was a miracle boy. He was fantastic. Then he had a year or so that he didn't progress as we thought. Now he looks fantastic. And I don't know if you saw that goal when he turned around and scored with his left foot. Then he made a chip from like 30, 40 yards,
Yes.
whatever. Well, what a keeper did that, I don't know. But then he lost against Wolfsburg, which, Marcus, is quite interesting because a football friend of mine, Niko Kovac, is the coach of Wolfsburg, used to be a coach of Bayern Munich, of course. We need a double there. Then he got fired after he got hammered by Eintracht, his former club. He won the cup with Frankfurt. Where I get to know him was, of course, that I played against him, but also that when I was a team manager for Norway, it was at Croatia. We talked about that before. He's a tough guy. Not a tough guy in terms of he tried to be tough. He's just like, he demands a lot from his players, and he's been struggling to get that in Wolfsburg. But now he's in a winning row. He doesn't lose games, and it's quite interesting to see. Very different from a lot of the other clubs in Germany, because Wolfsburg is a part of the Volkswagen. It's the car city. If you go to Wolfsburg, and we talked about that before, but it's not, I won't say no disrespect to Wolfsburg, but it's not the most exciting places, but it's a fantastic place where they're very good organized. Everybody will drive around with a Volkswagen, and they have had some great players. Remember who was there? De Bruyne was there. Julian Draxler was there for a while. They've had a lot of great players, and now against Dortmund they scored very early and very late and winning 2-0. So I'm very happy for Niko Kovac, and Dortmund find themselves in 6th position in the league.
Please set into context where we were with Kovac at the beginning of the season, because like you say, he has you could say he earned his opportunity to coach at Bayern through strong performances at Eintracht, but we were discussing him getting potentially sacked in the beginning of the season. Now unbeaten in their last 8, I believe, 3 straight Bundesliga wins. As having played yourself, having been a sporting director yourself, where is that fine line between renewing by firing coach, but also giving him time? Because I'm sure the same thoughts were going through the leadership of Wolfsburg at the times that they were struggling to get those results.
Yeah, but I think it's quite interesting because some clubs like Nottingham Forest, they're loyal to Steve Cooper, they keep him. Other clubs, it's alarm button straight away, and they get him out already in the Premier League, as you've seen. Jesse Marsch was also on the brink, and he was talking about people. They stand behind me, but as an old manager used to say, I rather have the board in front of me, so I know where they are. When you see Wolfsburg, you have to understand their story. They had a great manager who took them to Champions League, guy called Oliver Glasner. And Oliver Glasner, the Frankfurt now coach, who is fantastic, doing a fantastic job for them, he didn't come very well with Smatke, who was the sporting director there. He's also a former footballer, very strict guy in terms of he's a strong man. I use the word strong man. He has his idea, has had quite a success in different clubs. So when Glasner left, he went for Florian Kohfeldt. And Florian Kohfeldt is what Uwe Rösler always, he's not saying that about Kohfeldt, but Uwe Rösler, my former coach, he said he is an iPad coach. He's talking about people who do that with their iPad. And then they got Van Bommel. Van Bommel. And then Van Bommel was fired, and then came Kovac. And I don't think I've forgotten a coach now, have I?
Well, Van Bommel got fired. Kohfeldt took over after Van Bommel, no?
Yes, I think that. Yeah.
And Glasner took them to Champions League.
Yeah, so Florian Kohfeldt was out. So there comes a stage when even if the sport director doesn't have to fire a coach that early again, then it will slowly get closer and closer to you. I mean, that is the thing. So Kovac got to stay. Is there with his brother. Is a guy that, like I said, demands from his players. He got them strict. He was a defender himself. Liked to have a strong basic of his game. And I'm like I said, it's good to see Wolfsburg on this run.
On the topic of then coaches who are doing well and coming back from hardship, if you might call it that, is Marco Rose at RB Leipzig, who is having a fantastic time with the club. Now won again, beat Freiburg. Mind you, Freiburg are still there in the top. They had the second spot. And I believe they lost it now. But Freiburg still, they've lost to Dortmund, Bayern, and Leipzig this season, which you would have thought ahead of the season would be expected, or at least they wouldn't take those losses too hard. So Freiburg still doing well, but RB Leipzig have found themselves, it seems.
Yeah, and what's quite interesting, Marcus, is over the 2 games, they're beating Hoffenheim. They beat Hoffenheim, and then they beat Hoffenheim and Freiburg. So they were like 2 teams ahead of them, surprisingly ahead of them. So no Leipzig is back. We're always using that Tour de France metaphor. You know, there is like 3-4 bikers who got a minute or 2 away, and now they are just there behind him, which is quite interesting. And it's also the fantastic draw of Manchester City in the Champions League. Leipzig, who did the job, they went to the next stage. And Marco Rose, it's they say this is the Red Bull way of playing, whatever that means. I mean, that means power. That means that they have some intensity. They're coming quick forward. And we talked about it before, how many strikers they have with Szoboszlai, with Paulsen, who's been a lot of injury, with Nkunku, with Silva, Timo Werner, who's missing, unfortunately, the World Cup for them. And some news at Leipzig is that quite sadly the owner of Red Bull, Didier Mateschitz, died. This is a Red Bull chef. This is a guy who had the idea for the brand Red Bull after he went to Thailand and found this drink, and so he shared this with a businessman in Thailand. But he died. So Red Bull have now reorganized their management. Why is that important for RB Leipzig? That is because they have the Red Bull will be now run by 3 people, and one of them who will have sport, entertainment, sponsorship, and everything. This is Oliver Mintzlaff, who was the CEO of RB Leipzig. So as they brought in Max Eberl, if this is complicated for you, but Max Eberl used to be in Gladbach. They take him on like for head of sport, but they are now losing their CEO, Oliver Mintzlaff, who is now going from being the head of RB Leipzig to maybe being the most powerful man in sport, entertainment, and event, because he's going to run the fantastic brand builder company Red Bull. So that is that news, Marcus. And another news is that former under 21 player I played with, a Norwegian called Bjørn Gulden, who has been head of Puma, and is also, as it stands now, he is also in the board of Dortmund. But I do think that when you go from Puma to Adidas, he is now the new head of Adidas. That is for going from Manchester United to Liverpool, because you can say Dortmund and Bayern, because that is quite usual in Germany. But so the 2 companies who that was grounded by the brothers Dassler, one did Adidas and the other one did Puma. He is now going to be CEO of there. So there's a lot of changes in also in the kind of area around sport in Germany. That was a commercial update from the German football podcast.
Yeah, well, we always like a little update from the background. That's always good and worth knowing. Absolutely. But I think that it is late here. I think we will conclude it from here. You have a early morning flight to Vienna, correct?
I'm going tomorrow, and I just want to end with 2 funny facts as well.
Yeah.
First of all, Alonso has been a part of our podcast so many times.
True.
He has turned a bit around now, and tonight, as we're speaking, that was in the Rhein derby. That was a derby in Germany against Cologne, who is struggling. Baumgartner, by the way, they were 1-0 down and ending up winning 2-1, which was great. And ladies and gentlemen, it's an unbelievable honor to say that Schalke of all teams in the world, struggling with 6 points before this round, they beat Mainz, that we've been so much praising with Bo Svensson. So Schalke won 1-0. And at the bottom now of the German Bundesliga, Schalke is a bit they're back. They're still 18th in the league.
Yeah, they're holding on.
They're holding on with 9 points. And you have Stuttgart down there. You have Hertha down there. And of course, Bochum. But Schalke is back. It is unbelievable. Congratulations to Reis and the rest of his team there.
Remember that they have equaled the worst away record run in the Bundesliga, or tied it with Karlsruhe, I believe, for 35 winless games away. But they got the win at home. Terodde scored. And also it's interesting with the likes of Köln and Mainz, who started strong and who we have been very complimentary of, have kind of now drifted back into oblivion, somewhere in between it all. But having said that, the table changes so much. But Leverkusen are back. It's good to see. It's interesting also because the Union Berlin game, which they won 5-0, just goes to show in terms of the importance of what the beauty of football is, being those situations, a goal, and seeing how that can change a momentum. And now 2 wins in a row gives them some space from the relegation zone, although we were never worried for them. It's good to see for Alonso. And then we have the last game to conclude the Bundesliga before the World Cup break. But what will be interesting, that I want your final thoughts on this, is it will be a while until we speak about another Bundesliga round following this weekend's games. And considering how much time that will pass, it's as if it's a yes, they have a Christmas break usually, but now longer than usual. We can expect something entirely different from all teams involved, considering the time that will pass.
Yeah, and also that there will be a transfer window starting there, so there could be but it's only the English. They do it the other way. I mean, I did the League Cup today, and the next round, the World Cup's final is the 18th of December. Maybe England is there, maybe not, but that doesn't matter, because a lot of these foreigners playing in England, they will probably be involved in the semi-finals, in the bronze final and the final. So we're landing the 18th. What do the English do? 21st, 22nd. Then it's the next round, the 4th round of the League Cup. And then they have some Christmas pudding, and then they are starting 26, 27, and 28. They play the New Year. We're playing 1st of January, and then the 5th of January, and so on and so on and so on. So only the English do that. And but I have to admit, I think that I love English football. I think it's great to have those games, and I was fortunate to play in some of them myself. That feeling on Boxing Day when you go to the stadiums. I don't know if you remember, Marcus, but we went out there. We had we put a Santa Claus hat on you, and you were going to the games. There's a great atmosphere in that. So I think the Germans will miss that. But to be fair, this is only the English who's doing that. So I think the England will be proud, and they will just say, "So fucking what?"
Yeah, don't take away our Boxing Day tradition.
Exactly.
I think it will be but I'll say this much: I will look forward to not be involved in a Christmas game schedule. So I will look.
Yeah,
I love Boxing Day games, but I will look forward to not playing them. So,
but Marcus, that must be the ending. The one of the greatest feeling I had as a dad when you play up there, when the whole family, we were in a house in Scotland somewhere, and we were watching you, and you scored a goal.
That was worth the trip. That was worth the travel.
That was worth the trip. Yeah. So okay, let's not be too nostalgic. Marcus, it's been a pleasure. You go to bed, and then we speak soon. And auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen, and we will be back with the final Bundesliga round before the World Cup break this weekend, and then we will do some World Cup specials as well, Dad. But for now, we will get our sleep and then reconvene very, very soon. Auf Wiedersehen.
Thanks for watching, and please subscribe. And if you have any comments, any issues, themes that you want us to discuss, give us a comment, and we always reply to that. And if you know something that we don't know, which you probably do, just give us a shout.